And welcome back to Punchline with Professor Mutahi Ngunyi. We went to break as you explained that the Deputy President was a little bit too comfortable with near presidency powers in the first term. And I pose that question to you, whether Raila Odinga is doing the same thing. Is Raila overconfident in BBI? We've seen him making some, declarations saying he's going to talk to the president about this, that, and the other, directing ministers. Is he falling into the Ruto trap?
The problem with being overconfident is that you become oblivious of danger. And I discern a situation where if the trap is set for Raila Odinga on this particular path, that he will not be able to see it because he's overconfident. If you're to flip our argument, because we are saying argument one is that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto have separated. Let's flip that argument and look at the other side. Is it possible that this whole process is a setup on Raila Odinga? That once, if they flip on him and ultimately he is unable to get out of it, this becomes the end of him. Is it possible, hypothetically, that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto call each other at night and they laugh,
have a good laugh?
see how we fix this guy.
Right.
Is it possible? And I'm asking that because, you see, generational succession happened in 2013. My generation, which was generation in waiting, overtook the Raila generation, and we took over the reins of power through Uhuru Kenyatta. Once generational succession has happened, it is very difficult for you to reverse that process. It's like when a child is born, you cannot return it to the mother's womb and say, hey, we didn't mean it. So for Raila to become president, if you're to flip the argument, will be against that law of nature where succession has happened, and now you're bringing a person from a 75-year-old guy to come and be the leader of a nation that has already experienced that shift.
Unless it's ceremonial, or people don't feel that there was any benefit in terms of that generational change. If
it's ceremonial, but the real reins of power rests in the executive prime minister, who is from the generation that succeeded Mwai Kibaki, then that would make sense. So when we say that the end of BBI and the handshake, only one person knows, that's Uhuru Kenyatta. We cannot be sure whether it was done to deal with William Ruto or it was done to deal with Raila Odinga. But it can also be argued that maybe it was done to make country better. And if making country better will do one of them or both of them, so be it.
Let's pursue that both of them. Is it possible that President Kenyatta has another play in mind which does not involve Raila or Ruto for 2022?
I highly doubt it. I hear people saying that Matiang'i is on the cards. And as a political scientist, when I look at that, I get very uncomfortable with that. Because politics is about the building of certain blocks. And these blocks are built historically. And you cannot get a person from an NGO, which is where Matiang'i was. You come, you make him a minister, and then you load powers on him, and he doesn't have roots, and then you make him president. The only time that has happened, and the guy was not from an NGO, was a man called Vladimir Putin. You remember his boss, Boris Yeltsin. He took him from wherever he was, sent him to Germany and sent him to KGB, many spaces, really grooming him. And when the time came, he pulled him from the woods and he made him prime minister, then he made him president. And that way, Putin was loyal to his former boss in totality. That's the only way.
Why would that not be the play here?
In the case of Matiang'i.
Right.
The problem with that, if you're to use history also, is remember Arap Moi took a man who was completely greenhorn in the name of Uhuru Kenyatta. Although Uhuru Kenyatta had roots. He had roots. He had roots. And Uhuru Kenyatta had been taught by his father. And then he spent all his time in the Moi School of Politics learning. And then Moi says, now, come in, I give you the presidency. People rejected him completely. So it will be a gamble. Although Uhuru was being put there by Moi so that he can protect the Mois, and if you put Matiang'i there so that he can protect certain interests, because politics is about interest.
He would protect dynasties, is what you're saying?
Dynasties and graduated hustlers.
Graduated hustlers.
Yes.
You seem to be suggesting that whereas President Kenyatta has elevated Cabinet Secretary Matiang'i to this sort of super CS status, he can't really trust him because he doesn't really know what he's made of or his roots. Am I hearing you correctly?
Okay. You see, a man called Dos Santos appoints a Matiang'i and says, Matiang'i, we love you so much, we will make you presidente in Angola. And he leaves the office to him and he goes on retirement. Then the guy he appoints basically turns around him. And now Dos Santos is being roasted, like, you know, very slowly with his family. So the people in power are very cautious about the roots of the people you replace yourself with for purposes of perpetuity. My other fear regarding Matiang'i is that there's what we call the fall of the favorite. And even in historically...
The fall of the favorite.
The favorite, yeah. Historically, there has always been a guy who has been fattened, literally. And once he's become fat enough...
For the kill?
For the kill. Then once you remove him, you say the problem was not me all along. The problem was Matiang'i. I give you examples. Arab Moi,
right.
Charles Njonjo, Kamodo, Sheriff Nasir, he fattened them, Gigi Karaoke, all of them. And nobody thought these guys would fall. But when the time came, when he needed to have all his sins washed, he sacrificed them and he said that the problem was not me, the problem was these guys. That's also on the cards. Unlike
Gideon Moi, who then, would you argue, is trusted pair of hands?
Politics is not about trust. Politics is about interests.
Okay, same interests, right?
And interests are material in nature. They are material in nature. Matiang'i is poor. To put it
bluntly.
Bluntly. He doesn't have interest that he will come in to protect. William Ruto has interest that he will protect. And he's protecting his, he'll also be protecting those of others. Gideon Moi has interest to protect. Raila Odinga, although he's a poor prince, he has a few interests that he will also protect, as he protects the interests of others. So when the boardroom will sit and agree on whom to put there as president, a guy who has no means will not feature at all. So
you don't believe in the supremacy of the vote at all, do you? That it matters if Kenyans show up for elections?
And you know what? Nikita Khrushchev taught us that those who cast the vote don't count. The people who count are those ones who
count the vote?
Count the votes. That's the point. And by the way, the people, and we need to tell them this, don't overrate yourselves. You'll be told where to go and you will go. Even Mount Kenya guys, if ethnic consciousness is stronger than hustler consciousness, if they're directed this way, they will go that way. And if they disagree, the people who count the vote will count the vote accordingly. Especially in the referendum.
Right, right. So, because you've mentioned Mount Kenya, there appears, though, to be a rebellion that is being led by the deputy president and, of course, Mount Kenya allies against President Kenyatta. After, you know, yesterday's BBI rally in Meru, do you feel Mount Kenya is boarding?
I think Mount Kenya just needs to be spoken to. And what they are saying is, instead of sending Raila to come and tell us what we need to do, and instead of sending all those people we saw there, why doesn't Uhuru Kenyatta himself come in person? And why they are saying that is because Uhuru Kenyatta is the one who brought one William Ruto to the people of Central Kenya. And he told them, although we fought and we were taken to the Hague with this man, let's work with him. The people of Rift Valley forgave Uhuru Kenyatta, whatever might have been the problem, and they forgave Kibaki as well, and the people of Mount Kenya forgave William Ruto, and they worked together. Now that we are told we are not going to work with William Ruto, what I think the people of the mountain are saying is for Uhuru Kenyatta to go and explain this to them.
Didn't he do that? I mean, Sagana too, you had the president pretty much saying, look, I have not said it is this or that. When the time comes, we are a God-fearing nation. I think if I'm to, you know, Kikuyu nation, as it were. And God will show us the way. Of course, God, I mean, politically could possibly be a reference to himself, but and I mean no offense to people of faith. I'm just saying politically that there would be a direction given by him on the way to go. So hasn't he already said that, you know, calmed those fears enough? I've not said Raila, I've not said Ruto, I've said let's wait.
The best calculation is always the absence of calculation. And vagueness is a gift that God has given to leaders. What Uhuru Kenyatta told Kikuyus in Sagana was vague. He did not say anything. That is one. He did not say we are with Ruto or we are with Raila. He kept it there. That is one. Two, God never interferes with the civic matters of humans. There we are bringing God into situations where he will be asking you, mnataka nifanye nini sasa? You know, because God lets you humans do your own things. And that's why he's given us free will. So God does not know who the president of Kenya will be. But probably he knows the mistakes or the right moves that will make to lead to a particular situation. But if you read the Bible and you read history, he never interferes with civic matters. So on that account that only God knows, I think Uhuru Kenyatta needs to go back and read his Bible properly. That God never interferes. But going back to the rebellion in Yema, I think the Yema people are just a little uncertain right now. Once Uhuru leaves office, they'll be out of power for the next 30 or so years. So they're asking, what is the plan? And the experience at Moi for 24 years, their businesses were messed up. So they're saying, give us a plan. In the meantime, Uhuru Kenyatta is the only one with a plan. He has not revealed it yet. His cards are very close to him.
Is the plan anything to do with, you know, you're hearing the narrative of the, is it one man, one vote, one shilling? Will that be critical in sort of uniting the region?
That conversation that happened in Mount Kenya needs to be read very carefully. What they were talking about is proportional representation. And they said it actually, that if we are to change this constitution, we need to have a few more constituencies in Central Kenya. And an example is given, for instance, if you go to Thika here, there is a word in Thika that is equivalent to Duale's constituency in Garissa. So if Duale was in Thika, he would have been an MCA.
Correct.
If MCA guy in Thika would have been an MP.
Right.
So when you talk about proportional representation, you are also talking about a parliamentary system.
Right.
So it appears like consensus has been arrived at, that we are going parliamentary, but we're not going to say it loudly. And that's why we are talking the second point, the subsidiary point, which is a point around proportional representation. So if Uhuru can come and tell us, guys, we are going parliamentary, and I'm also going to run for executive prime minister, all the Kikuyus would move from where they are and line up behind him. Wow.
As we conclude, let's talk about the Deputy President's chances. With his, it appears as if the state is or the elements of the state are pushing him to a position where his back is against the wall. If he wants to be president in 2022, what must he do now?
In my view, William Ruto will not be president. He'll be made president. And William Ruto has refused to be made president. He is making himself president. If you look at the terrain of power from where he operates, William Ruto is answerable to no one. He's only answerable to himself. And maybe to God, we don't know. Nobody advises William Ruto. William Ruto advises himself. At least with Uhuru Kenyatta.
That's a problem.
It's a problem. It's a big problem. You know, they say that whenever you see a self-made man, you are staring at the horrors of unskilled labor. That's what they say. And when you see William Ruto in the state in which he is now, without a mentor, without being responsible to anybody, he was staring at the horrors of unskilled labor. And that's why Uhuru Kenyatta, in my view, told him, come, let me make you president. And let me mentor you. Let me mentor you. Let me come with wazes. Let me come with interests, capitalists here and there. And we show you how this thing is done. Ruto said no. So he decided to go mentor himself, advise himself. And that's why it will be very difficult for him to become president. But in 2022.
So the only play would be to humble himself?
His only play, look for a mentor. Look for Museveni, for instance. Let him show you how it is done. And look for people you are responsible to. Even in the Bible, we hear of this, that Apollos was responsible to Paul, and Paul had a group of people that he reported to. Now, I don't even know that William Ruto can be rebuked by his wife. He goes to such minute levels of correction.
What do you think of him? Just your honest opinion of him.
William Ruto is my friend. A fantastic mind. Very generous. Extremely generous. If you see these Kikuyu MPs following him, they're following him because of his generosity. But as I've said in the past, you can never buy a Kikuyu, you can only rent one. So those ones are on rent. After the rent is over, they will go back to where they came from. But William Ruto has a charm to keep them going. And he, as I've said, he will not become president in 2022. But one day,
he will?
He'll become president. One day he'll become president. And the thing is, those people fixing him, they better watch out.
You said something about him, and I just want to turn it around and talk about Nairobi politics. Briefly, you know, we were talking about Ruto refusing to be mentored, as it were. Mike Sonko, the besieged Nairobi governor, or is he really? Did he break away from the play on Nairobi where he was to be, in a sense, mentored and sort of have somebody there to hold his hand in terms of a technical deputy president? And if that was it, his refusal for mentorship, you see the president now summoning MCs to State House. All of a sudden, an impeachment motion that I believe was to be set this week is now scuttled. What's going on there?
Okay, talk about mentorship. Arap Moi became president because he allowed Kenyatta to mentor him. If Raila Odinga had stayed under Kibaki in his watch, after 2002 election, Raila Odinga would be retiring as president today. And Uhuru Kenyatta will be the man who will be electing. But Raila bolted and he said, I will mentor myself. He went, he took the tools of trade and started the horrors of unskilled labor. That's why he was not able to become president. Even now he's still struggling with it. William Ruto has also bolted. And he said, I'll go and do it myself. Raila Odinga has come back to the fold, and he said, well, let's do co-creation with Uhuru Kenyatta. And that's why his prospects are much, much better. Mike Sonko refused mentorship, and he went completely astray, especially the technical part. And Uhuru has just told him, guy, you better come back right here. And it's because Mike Sonko is a political asset that people do not understand. And is a serious symbol of our national politics. And Sonko will survive this particular process. You see how he humbled himself like a lamb in the slaughterhouse at State House. He did that because he
handing over the county.
Hand over the county, remove the impeachment. Maybe it was some kind of a plea bargain. You work on these corruption cases you have, and then we go back on track.
But who has who in this scenario? When I spoke to the governor on Punchline, he was quite clear that the time for dynasties was up, and I can almost remember him, verbatim saying, the Kenyattas, Odingas, name whatever you want to call it, you want to say is a dynasty, we're now irrelevant because of our population, because of our economic situation, etc. So when you talk about him being, capital that we many people perhaps don't really understand. Does the president have him, or does he have the president?
It's both ways. It's both ways, in my view. You see, anybody who has aligned himself with William Ruto, and they have been formidable. KRA has been sent to them. ESCC.
Right.
We were told that we were going to be demolishing 4,000 houses. We demolished about 5 of them, which were owned by people who were probably supporting or bankrolling political activities aligned to Ruto's side. We don't know. So really, although Sonko might believe strongly in that conversation about dynasties and hustlers, I think he has examined himself, and he said between EACC courts and this following Ruto, I'd rather just abandon and have the back of the president covered.
Will he ever be president, Sonko?
I don't know. I don't think so. Especially because, can you imagine Sonko as commander-in-chief?
You couldn't imagine him as governor. That's happened, so.
Yeah, I don't think so. If we make Sonko president, we have as a country to plead temporary insanity. And there are moments when countries are allowed to plead temporary insanity and say, look, we're going to have a Tito as governor, Sonko as governor. And that's exactly what we did in the 2017 election. We all went into a state of temporary insanity, and we put in these fellows there.
Finally, there's been this hashtag Uhuru must go in recent days on the back of Corona and other issues really where Kenyans seem to feel that this administration has flatly failed. Is a revolution possible in Kenya? Arab Spring style?
Revolutions come in small installments. They come little by little. But before the revolution happens, there are a lot of underlying happenings. French Revolution, for instance, Marie Antoinette telling the starving crowds of Paris that if you cannot eat bread, why don't you go eat cake? This is she was a 14-year-old queen.
Right.
Things were very bad. Poverty levels were astronomical. The case of Kenya is completely different. We just the other day went back and reclaimed our position as the biggest economy in this particular region. Yeah, people are saying they have no cash in their pockets, but I think the frustrations people are having is frustration of aspirations. You are living in Kayole, you were aspiring to go to Buruburu. During the course of this year, it has not happened, but your status has remained. So revolutions don't come out of very flippant excuses, such as allowing an aircraft to come in, and you have
grand corruption.
In my view, the corruption under Uhuru government is nothing compared to what we saw under Moi. The only problem with this corruption is that it is more conspicuous than it is grand. That is number one. And then number two, Uhuru has tried. I don't think there is any president in this country who has done as much to fight corruption as Uhuru has. When one minister was accused by some fellow of being corrupt during the days of Kibaki, Kibaki asked him, whose goat have you eaten? Basically telling him, I'll give you cover. But Uhuru does not brook that kind of nonsense. So he's really worked well. So I don't think what we have here is grand corruption. What we have here is theft in this country. But even this theft is partly manufactured. I'll give you an example. Kenyatta told us, and Kenyatta, this man needs to be watched very carefully. You need to have a very short leash on him. He told us that one particular guy went to a bank in Westlands and he withdrew 4.4 billion?
Yeah.
Now, why all of this is imaginary constructions is because the account from which this money was withdrawn had a name. And if it was a company, it had directors. How come no action was taken on that?
But we saw some people paraded, some arrests, someone paraded in court, I believe.
44 billion. The 44 billion.
It was fake.
I don't know. They never resolved it.
Right.
They never resolved the 44 billion thing. So really, I think the point I'm making there is that the president is doing his best in the fight against corruption. The prosecution is as cold as a lizard, which is what it should be. But
which is what it should be.
It should be as cold as a lizard. Kenyatta needs to learn a little bit from DPP, Haji. Haji guy doesn't talk much. He's cold, even when you shake his hand, hands are cold like a lizard. But Kenyatta is rather flamboyant. And his flamboyance is what has created the impression that this corruption thing has gotten to a level that we cannot handle.
Right. So bottom line, a revolution will happen slowly. Is that what you're saying? It will happen, but...
Revolutions come in small installments.
Is it coming?
No, it is not coming. Absolutely. I'm a student of history and political science and studied Russian Revolution, Prussian Revolution, French Revolution, even the Arab Spring. And the conditions that caused that to happen do not exist in our country, in my view.
Professor Mutahi Ngunyi, or should I, you might, yeah, I'd rather punch you than have to shake your hand and then check it later. Most corny ending ever. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah. And thanks for watching Punchline. We'll see you again next Sunday. Bye-bye.